and welcome to Positive Parenting 101, where connection comes before correction. This podcast offers a practical, compassionate tools to help you raise confident, emotionally healthy children through empathy, clarity, and consistency. This is our first episode, people, and we are celebrating because this is our fourth podcast with Miss Karen.
Woohoo! Yay!
We need an applause for that. Yay! We're celebrating positive parenting 101. This is the idea of Miss Karen, and thank God he shared to us. So, Miss Karen, can you please introduce more about yourself because this is our first episode?
Definitely. So Daniel and I are coming both as parents and for me, grandparent and believers in the Lord Jesus Christ. So our perspective is going to be biblically based as well as experience based. So we'll talk about what the experts say and give you some advice, but a lot of what we're going to do is talk about experiences. And certainly, as you listen to these episodes, if you have ever any questions you want to ask us, feel free to send
Yes.
us those questions, and we'll be happy to talk about whatever it is that's on your heart as a positive parent.
Positive parent indeed. And we need to advocate that because nowadays our children are getting worse and worse. What do you think?
Mhm.
Miss Karen. So
Well,
what is a positive parenting?
I think that's a very good question. What is it to be a positive parent? And that's, a very, very good question. And what's the gauge to know if we're doing it right? Because these children
Yes.
come to us with no manual for how to do it. No how to
Yes.
manual comes with the babies. And then, I want to quote a child psychiatrist I listened to once, and he said, I went to school, I got my degree as a child psychologist, and they taught us six different theories for child rearing. He said, then I
Mm.
married and I had six children, and now no theories.
No
My
theories.
no theories, because you know what? Every child is unique. And even though we're going to talk about things that every parent has in common, every child needs, there's certainly universal truths that we're going to talk about. But the reality is they are all different and they come pre-wired with their own personalities. And so our goal as parents, I think, is, as Daniel was describing from our opening, is we want to raise healthy, productive, confident children who can be independent of us. So we're raising them to not need us. But I
Mm.
can promise you, I have a 94-year-old mother who is still my mom. I'm her firstborn. I'm in my 70s, but she's still my mommy and I am still her daughter. So even though after a while your children grow and they don't need you like they did, they're still your children, and that's a good thing because family is forever.
Yes, family is forever, people. Positive parenting is a child centered approach to raising children that focus on guidance, respect, and encouragement and connection rather than punishment or control. The goal is to help children develop self discipline, emotional intelligence, confidence, and responsibility while maintaining a strong, trusting parent child relationship.
Absolutely. This is the goal. And this is why we wanted to do this podcast.
Hmm.
Because as parents, we understand the challenges, we understand the victories, and we understand the goal, which is children that are independent and confident and create a life of beauty and healthiness. So, how do we
Yes.
do that? And that's some of the things that we're going to talk about week by week. We have an outline of different things to talk about, and we'll get specific and tell stories. What are some principles to build confidence? What about the spiritual life we want to put into our children? Some parents feel like, oh, we shouldn't talk about God at all because they should come up with their own plan and their own ideas. Well, that's true once they get older, but meanwhile, there's nothing wrong with modeling before your children your own spiritual life to give them hope and to give them guidance in ways to go about finding those kind of truths in their own lives. Love and affection. What's the right boundaries for love and affection? Can you be too affectionate with your children? Can you model before them affection? So these are all things that we're going to talk about with our podcast.
Mm,
So, what do you think
definitely.
about that?
Yes, totally interesting, people. Positive Parenting 101 will be available on any platform between the third week of March. So please tune in that. But you can watch out live for all social media every Saturday. So, Miss Karen, what is the gauge? Do we know if we are doing the right?
That question is so open ended because most of us as parents, as we're working through those early years in particular, we don't know. We don't know if we're
Mm,
doing a good job or not. We get them to sleep at the end of the day and we think, oh, we made it through today. And I'll tell you, this is my personal theory of child rearing. The child's first 5 years feel like 10, the next 10 feel like 5. And then you're just trying to get through those last few years to get them to college, to work, to be independent of you. So gauging how you're doing is something we're going to be specific about. We're going to talk about the early years. We're going to talk about the mid years, and we'll even talk about the teenage years, engaging how we're doing because sometimes they can try your patience. I have another thing I used to say, toddlers are adorable, so they survive. Because
yes.
to me, those toddler years were quite challenging. When they could do something new every day and you really couldn't take your eyes off of them, they were always into something that felt like, are we going to make it through this? And, the truth is, parenting is a humbling experience, especially if you truly love and care about your children, which I'm trusting that our listeners really love and care about their children. And that's why they're here.
Definitely. People, you were doing the positive parenting right when over time your child feels emotionally safe with you, stays connected even after conflict, and gradually shows more self control, honesty, and responsibility, not because they are fear punishment, but because they understand expectations and consequences. The real gauge is not a perfect behavior, but strong parent child relationship where mistake lead to learning. Emotions can be expressed without fear. Respect flows both ways, and both parent and child are growing in patience, regulation, and trust.
Yes, and I started parenting a little later in life than a lot of my peers. I didn't have my first child till I was almost 29 years old. I'd had a couple of miscarriages earlier in my marriage. And so I was a little older and I felt like, "Oh, I can do this." I always wanted to be a mom, piece of cake, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wrong. I was astounded as how much more difficult being a mom, a home mom with your child can be, especially since I had had a lot of education. I had had a career, and at this point, was thrilled and delighted to have my son, and we were nursing, but this child would not sleep. He just was not happy unless he was nursing And then he'd sleep a couple of hours, and it was a rough first 4 months. I really thought I was going to go crazy. So those of you that have really little ones understand that this kind of intensity is unique and important to child development. And it does take, the truth is, a lot of personal sacrifice to say, I'm going to spend all my time with this little one. And, you're great if you have a partner that can spend time and help. And we welcome that. But generally, those early first couple of years is mostly the mom. That's the
The
reality.
mom.
The
Mhm.
mom. The mom.
Definitely the mom. So we celebrate Mother's Day more. So, Miss Karen, key principles to building confident, secure, a resilient children. What are they? Principles.
Yeah, resilience is something where a child can withstand difficult things. Because in this day and age, there's a lot of children that have special needs. Maybe they're having trouble reading, or they're having some kind of physical problems, or they're having some emotional problems, or the marriages aren't working out well, or there's poverty issues, or a parent not working. There's financial issues. There's a lot of stresses in families' lives right now. And we
Mhm.
think, "Oh, as long as the child has a roof over their head and a bottle in their mouth, they're gonna be okay." But no, that child is experiencing and feeling everything the parents are feeling. So the first principle is just know that the child is very aware of how it's going in the marriage that they were born into.
Very well said, Miss Karen. Building confident, secure, and resilient, as Miss Karen talking about. Children's begins with creating consistent emotional safety and a strong connection, where children feel seen, heard, and valued without fear of shame or rejection. Clear and predictable boundaries delivered with empathy help children feel protected while learning self discipline and responsibility. Encourage effort rather than outcomes nurtures inner confidence, while allowing age appropriate independence builds competence and self trust.
It does. And, to children, as I'm trying to describe, they feel your stress. And the truth is, parenting can be very stressful, especially if you are feeling alone, or you're feeling inadequate, or the parent is not feeling secure and confident. And it's okay to say, you know what? I need help. This parenting thing is hard, and I need help.
Mm-hmm.
And acknowledging that you need some help is really important. And that's where maybe you have a church that has some counseling or therapy, or some even parenting classes. I know I was part of a child care center that did parenting classes, and I recommend that for all young couples to do some parenting classes, get some advice from older, more experienced parents, because it can help you through that very stressful season. Am I doing anything right? Is this working out? How come my baby's crying? How come my child won't listen to me? How come my teenager is rebelling? These are all things every parent experiences, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So, Miss Karen, spiritual life, the family that prays together, stay together, promise from God's word. What is the involvement in Parenting 101?
Well, because Daniel and I come from Christian viewpoint, we want to talk about the importance of letting your children know from the start that God is real, that God is love, that He cares about every one of us, and that we treat other people the way we want to be treated. These are biblical principles that I believe every child needs to be raised in that kind of confidence that we're talking about, where we know we're loved in an eternal way, that we have a purpose for being here, that this world isn't just eat, drink, and be merry. This world is about finding your purpose and your place. And that, as parents, is our goal for our children, that they find out who they are, who they're meant to be in their spiritual life, because we're not just physical beings. We have a soul, mind, will, emotions, and a spirit that is eternal. And so these things are need to be drilled into our children from a very early age. I have a grandchild living in my home, and he's 1, and we play little Christian videos for him, and he knows he can go praise Jesus raising his hands. He can't talk yet, but he can try to sing along with us, and he loves it. He starts dancing as soon as we put on the worship music. Our little 1-year-old is dancing to the music, and he's going to know Jesus all his life. He's not going to ever, he may not understand much yet, but he's going to always know that there is someone he can trust, someone bigger and better that will never leave him and never forsake him. So, the principle as a parent of bringing your personal spiritual life into your child's life is vital.
Totally, totally vital. People, strong spiritual life within the home is nurtured when family prays together because shared prayer invites God's presence, guidance, and peace into a daily relationships. God's word promise that when he is at the center, right? If you promise that when he is at the center, hearts are unified, love is strengthened, and wisdom is given for every challenge. Prayer becomes a covering that guards a family peace, restores broken moments, and anchors everyone in hope.
Absolutely. And, they've done studies and they found that it's true that families that pray together stay together. And it is for the purpose of raising godly children that God even created marriage. Marriage was his idea from the very first book of the Bible. And he talks about being fruitful, having children, and raising them to know God is immensely important. It's good for the next generation. It's good. And I think that, you mentioned at the beginning, Daniel, that things were not going well in our culture. And I think that a lot of parents have left out the
Mm.
spiritual truths to their children and have not portrayed to them the truth and the traditions of the Christian life.
The Christian life for sure. So, Miss Karen, let's talk about the love and affection, modeling it before, then, and with them. I think love and affection are most powerfully taught when they are consistently modeled before children and shared with them in everyday life. When parents openly shows kindness, respect, patience, and healthy affection toward one another and towards their children, they create living example of what love looks like in action. Through gentle words, attentive presence, and appropriate physical affection, and respectfully conflict resolution, children learn that love is safe, steady, and sincere.
That's beautiful. That was so beautiful. And when a child sees their parents being genuinely affectionate with each other, they can show hugs, they can show kisses, and they give hugs and kisses to their children, to their parents, to the multi generations, and that affection and that kind of joy in being together is expressed. It will run off on those children when they see that much joy. When my
Mhm.
when I get home from work and my little grandchild sees me and his face lights up and he reaches up for me to pick him up and run, it's just like makes my day. And he has built this incredible relationship with my husband that is full of affection. And we just believe that when you show love and affection to your child in a healthy way, that it will make a confident child, that they will know and experience the reality of love that will stand with them. They say by the time a child is 5, 80% of their personality has been established by age 5. So in
Mm.
those first 5 years that feel like 10, I promise you, whatever you sacrifice to put into your child, love and affection, spiritual life is going to pay off in the long run.
Definitely, very well said, Miss Karen. And let's talk about the strong marriage, secure children. A strong marriage creates secure children because it provides a stable, predictable, and emotionally safe foundation for the family. When children witness a mutual respect, healthy communication, affection, and constructive conflict between their parents, they develop a deep sense of safety and trust in the world around them. A united marital relationship reduces anxiety, models healthy relationships, and allows children to grow with confidence, knowing their home is grounded in love, commitment, and stability.
And I think you're right so much that there, unfortunately, Daniel, are 50% of families that end in divorce, and that's even true in the church. And that kind of trauma affects children drastically, especially children that end up growing up without a father figure in their life. It's devastating. They said that 90% of people in jail had no strong benevolent father figure in their life. This is a very real problem. And so as Daniel and I are going to take the time during these episodes of positive parenting, that you want to raise children that are going to have the knowledge of their parents, because their parents make the kind of commitment to be together, to show love and respect to each other in front of their children. And the reality is we all have arguments, we all have fights, and it's important that our children know that their parents are going to still be there once they make up, apologize to each other. And I think if your children see you, and we'll talk about this at length, we'll spend an episode, what do you do if your children hear you fighting and they're really upset about it? But just one more thing I wanted to say about this. I'm coming to this program with experience of having a failed marriage. We had two children that I ended up, when they were 1 and 3, a single mom, and for the next 6 years was a single mom, which I have the most ultimate respect for any single parent that listens to this, because I think it's the most difficult job on the planet. Um, and then I've been able to have almost a 34-year marriage with two more children, and I can tell you the difference between raising children with a spouse on board, helping, being there, even if their job is to support the mom to be able to be home with the child, is huge. And the problems that my second set of children had are nothing compared to the problems my first set of children had with divorced parents who then remarried, the blended family thing. And we're going to talk about that, because we're not going to sit here and pretend that everybody has an ideal situation. We know that there are all kinds of situations that we can talk about and how to turn that around. Because I can tell you, being a single mom with two little boys, crying together, being being there for them, we are still very close. 40 years later, we are still very, very close. They needed me way more than my second set of children have needed me, because they had more security with parents that are still together. They saw the security and the commitment and love and respect that their parents have. And it has made a huge difference. And ultimately, it's helped my older boys too, because they love my husband. They love what's been able to be developed, but it was hard. And so we're not going to just talk about the easy stuff and the good stuff. We're going to talk about some of the things that you as listeners are challenged with as well.
Very well said, Miss Karen. And today let's talk about also the vice versa. If you have a stress home and anxious children, I think a stress home often produces anxious children because constant tension, conflict, or emotional unpredictability makes children feel unsafe and uncertain. When the home lacks of calm and consistency, children become hyper aware of their surroundings, learning to anticipate problems rather than trust stability. Over time, this chronic stress can show up anxiety, emotional withdrawal, or behavioral challenges, or difficulty regulating feelings as children absorb the emotional climate of the home even when nothing is said out loud.
Hmm. You are so right, and I wish I could say, "Wow, I raised my children with a stress-free home." Not. There's definitely been times when mama was stressed, daddy was stressed, and yes, the children feel it. And so what do you do? How do you overcome when there has been anxiety in the home and stressful situations? And part of it, and I want to talk more about this on an episode about being honest with your children, not trying to hide, being very quick to apologize and to tell your children, wow, I made a mistake. They're really, really changes their heart when they hear their parent admit that they're not perfect, that they've made mistakes, and they're sorry for, overreacting, for being stressed and not being kind, whatever has been the result of behavior from those stresses. And when the children hear their parents admit to their weaknesses, it's like okay for them to realize, you know what? I'm not perfect either, and I they still love me. They're not gonna reject me because 'cause I'm not perfect either. It's very, very good. Conflict resolution is definitely something we're gonna talk about too. What do we do when we can't agree with our spouse? How do we get through those and create present a unified, family parenting our children when we can't agree? That's something that we can talk about in one of our episodes too.
Definitely. And as a part of our first episode, Miss Karen, let's talk about the danger of comparison and unrealistic expectations. People
This
comparison and unrealistic expectation are dangerous because they are quietly erode child's confidence, security, and sense of self. Don't you think, Miss Karen?
absolutely right, Daniel. Absolutely right. And you hear parents do it. I've heard parents say, "Well, my Johnny doesn't do it like my Billy did." And even if they talk about their children with comparison, it can be very destructive because
Yes.
everyone is so different that just like our psychologist we talked about at the beginning who said, I don't have any more theories, I got 6 children, they're all different. That is really, really something to celebrate, because when we celebrate the differences and not compare them to each other, but celebrate the differences, then they can to celebrate the differences in all people. They can see that we accept everyone. We're not prejudiced against someone because they're handicapped or from a different culture or nation or whatever the differences might be, because we had that celebrated in us. We weren't being compared to each other. We were being celebrated for our uniqueness and differences.
Uniqueness and differences. And to wrap up our discussion for today, Miss Karen, as our first episode, the integrity. How much do you tell, or being honest and upfront? And integrity in parenting is about being honest and upfront while sharing information in a way that is age appropriate, thoughtful, and grounded in wisdom. Children don't need every detail, but they need to truth they can trust. When parents communicate clearly, keep their word, and avoid deception, children learn that honesty is safe and reliable.
So true, Daniel. That is absolutely true. And they want truth from you, even if they're very little asking, but where do babies come from? They're not going to understand the answer, but you don't have to lie to them and say a stork brings the baby. But, sometimes my experience is you tell them a couple of sentences and that's all they want to hear. They don't want to hear it. They're not ready. And I remember a wonderful story from Corrie ten Boom, who went through World War II in a concentration camp. She was a Dutch woman, and her father was taking her to, he was a clockmaker, and he was carrying a suitcase to the train station, and she was asking about all the Nazi soldiers around them. And her father turned and said, "We're going on a trip right now. Do I make you carry this heavy suitcase?" And she's like, "No, I'm a little girl." He said, "Well, sometimes information is too heavy a suitcase for you to carry. So trust mom and dad carry that suitcase for you until you're bigger and older and strong enough to carry it yourself." Great.
Very well said, Miss Karen. A very empowering story indeed. People, this is our first episode on parenting or positive parenting 101. In the end, building confident, secure, and resilient children begins at home with connection, consistency, and character. A peaceful environment, strong marriage, honest communication, model love and affection, spiritual grounding, and realistic expectations all work together to create emotional safety. Miss Karen, would you like to plug in something?
Oh, yes, please follow us. We're going to talk about these different subjects at length for different episodes. So please come back to more Positive Parenting 101. But also, Daniel and I also have other podcasts we do together, including love letters. If you have relationship issues, be honest and go ahead and mail us a letter. Send us a letter that we can address any questions you may have. And that's what we do on that program. We also have one where we go into Bible Verses 101, where we describe our favorite verses and teach you subjects and give you personal examples of things that have made a difference in our lives. And last but not least, Coaching 101, where we talk about the gift of coaches and coaching and different models and different ways that you can get help from the expert.
Yes, people, please do support us because every episode that we are doing, we give you the best to make more bigger, better, and bolder. So, Miss Karen, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for listening. God bless you. We love you.
Welcome, people. See you soon.